I just saw the Molly Maguires, and I have to say, it was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. It was, one of the best movies I've seen in a while. It was made in 1970, and it stars Sean Connery as Black Jack Kehoe and Richard Harris as James McKenna. And it's a movie about coal miners in Pennsylvania in 1876. And the conditions back then in the mines were very bad, and a bunch of guys formed this group called the Molly Maguires, which was kind of a criminal organization that fought back against these mine owners to ensure better conditions for their workers. And Jack Kehoe is based on a real historical figure who was a Molly Maguire. And what the movie is about is Richard Harris's character, James McKenna, is sent in to this town in Pennsylvania to investigate the Molly Maguires. He's supposed to become one of them and be accepted by them. And he slowly does that over the course of the first half of the movie. And it's a very interesting movie because nobody talks for the first 15 minutes of the movie, but a lot is said without any words being said. You know exactly what the situation is, you know exactly what's going on just by watching the characters and their actions at the very beginning of the movie. And one of the main characters, Kehoe, does not talk for 40 minutes into the movie. He does not have a single line, but you see plenty of him doing things and even more importantly, watching and keeping an eye out on everybody. It sort of adds a bit of mystery and suspense to his character. Now, this is the point in the review in which I'm going to reveal spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, you might not want to watch anymore. But it turns out that McKenna does not, although he is tempted to join the Mollies, he's tempted by their side. At the end, he does not fully join them. He betrays Jack Kehoe and the rest of the Mollies, and they are sentenced to hang. But McKenna might betray his friends, but he will never truly be free inside, as Kehoe says, because his heart really is with the Mollies. Over the course of the movie, he works with them in the coal mines. He gets to know what it's like to be a coal miner, and he really starts to sympathize with the Mollies. And so betraying them in the end, even though he's doing what he was sent to do all along, it is something that he will never be able to live with for the rest of his life. It will always be a burden on his soul. Jack Kehoe, even though he is a criminal, he is not a bad man. I firmly do not believe he's a bad man, because he's doing what he believes is right for the good of his people. And he might, in fact, be the most, straight-shooting guy in the movie, the most consistent and the most true to his beliefs. And because even though he knows that stopping his actions would probably save his life, he knows the most honorable thing to do would be to fight until his death for his people, which is exactly what he does, because in the end he is caught and he's executed by hanging. There's a bit of a love interest too between James McKenna and the girl Mary, which is played throughout the movie. He stays at Mary's house, and also in that house is Mary's father, the old man, who is the guy who taught Kehoe everything he knows. But he taught him everything he knows, but he's too cowardly to do any of it himself. And when he dies in the end of the movie, he dies just of old age. He dies without making a sound, both literally and figuratively. And he just does not really have any impact. He just sort of dies, and it enrages Kehoe so much that this man who was his mentor has died without making his sound. And the scene that comes up next, I believe, is the most satisfying scene in the movie, because the old man doesn't have a proper suit to be buried in. He can't afford it. So what Kehoe does, he breaks into the general store and steals a suit. And things sort of get carried away. He starts stealing a lot of things and just throwing them out to the people who are standing there. And Makina is standing there watching him. And for a moment you see Makina start to pick up a shovel. And you wonder what he's going to do with it. Because remember, you don't really know what side he's on at this point. And then abruptly he takes that shovel and wham! He starts wailing on the store and breaking shelves and breaking products and everything. And the two of them, it just sort of escalates from there, because they both start ransacking the store to the point where they finally just start a huge bonfire and burn everything in the store. And that is the most satisfying scene in the entire movie. It's just a really great scene. Now, in this movie, there is action in this movie. Compared to like most modern movies, it's not non-stop action. Every action scene in the movie has a purpose. Whether it's the scene about halfway through, where they sneak over to the neighboring town of Shenandoah to murder a foreman in the mine, a supervisor, or whether it's, the general store scene that I just explained, or any of the other shootouts with the cops they have. Every action scene has a purpose. None of it's gratuitous. None of it was thrown in just to get people's attention. It all had a purpose. One thing about this movie is the morality is not absolute. There is no black or white. No person in this movie is entirely good, and no person is entirely evil. They are all doing what they think they have to do, because Makina is acting on he feels he's tired of being on the bottom and he wants to be somebody. He wants to make a name for himself, and that's why he's doing this dangerous detective work. And Kehoe he might be a criminal, but he's doing what he needs to do for his people, to try to get better rights for them and better working conditions down in the mines, and just make a better life for them. And the policemen in the movie, they're just doing their job, trying to impose law and order. And so really, no one is all good and no one is all bad, and your sympathies in this movie are torn, because you really want to support Makina, because you come to like his character, but in the end, when he betrays his friends, it's such an unconscionable act that Mary, who is willing to go with him, even if he had been a criminal, cannot go with him after she learns he's betrayed his friends, because that is an even worse thing than being a criminal and being a Molly Maguire. At least, even if it's a criminal thing, it's an honest thing. But betraying your friends like that, you can't trust somebody after they've done that. And even though they say to Makina, "Oh, you've done a great job, we're going to have a new high position for you out in Colorado," and he can get away scot-free for everything that he's done in the movie, he is going to be never free from this. And the very last dialogue in the movie, Kehoe says, just before he's being executed, he says to Makina, "You will never be free, and there is no punishment this side of hell for what you did." And then Makina looks at Kehoe and says, "Well, I'll see you in hell." And I think that pretty much sums up the entire movie, sums up the entire idea of the movie. And because you know that Makina's heart is with the Mollies. He fully sympathizes with them in his heart. And that's why he tries to get them to stop what they're doing before it's too late and they're all dead, because he really loves his friends. And that wasn't part of his job. He was supposed to just, get them busted, but he wants to actually stop them. He wants to actually save them. But in the end, he does turn them in, because they're headed towards death, and there's nothing he can do for them at that point. And he also turns them in, I believe, out of guilt in his own heart for having sided with them. This movie is morally complex on many levels, and it is a very good movie. It's highly recommended to everyone. So I recommend everyone, if you haven't seen it, go out and see the Molly Maguires. It's definitely worth it. It's not, the fastest paced movie, but you know what? It's a great movie. And that's all I have to say.